Welcome. And you're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. And can you tell I'm excited that we're going to have some poetry? And we got some great poets. Stay with us. Beautiful. And also, beautiful is the fact that we turn our attention to some investigative poetry now. And we are delighted to be joined by two wonderful writers, poets, really heroes in the Bay Area and in this country for the incredible work they do. Joining us is Aya de León. Aya de León is the director of the Poetry for the People program at UC Berkeley. She is acquiring editor for Fighting Chance Books, the new climate justice fiction imprint at She Writes Press. And she is the author of many wonderful books of fiction and poetry, beautiful titles: The Mystery Woman in Room 3, Queen of Urban Prophecy, nice one, and many, many more. Also joining us is John Carl. His latest book is Rainbow Weather. It's a collection of new poems focusing on his lifetime involvement as an activist for ecological planetary justice. In 1992, he was one of the committee for the last 30 years. John was a board member of Penn Oakland for almost 20 years, and for the last decade, he has been an editor of the Revolutionary Poets Brigade's annual anthology. Aya de León, John Carl, welcome to Flashpoints.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, it's good to have you both with us, and it's such a rare treat. I have to admit that oftentimes when I play poetry or have wonderful poets on, there's always one call, and I have to admit, it's usually a guy who says something like, "You know, Dennis, I really love your show. I've been listening for 32 years, but could you cut it out with that poetry stuff?" And I say, I'm going to have to double down on my poetry. And so I got a duet here that's really crazy and wonderful. Aya de León, tell us about why you're participating and sort of the lead off on this wonderful Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival. Tell us about the festival and why you're participating.
Well, Watershed has been a fixture here in Berkeley in the East Bay for many, many years. And I think for everyone who, particularly folks coming out of the sciences and activists who have been sounding the alarm about the climate crisis for years, one thing that folks have learned is that just giving people the information that there is a crisis and that we need to take really drastic political steps to build the mass movement that will be needed to push back against corporations and the pay-to-play politicians that they buy to change things at a big, big level. We have learned that information is not enough. And one of the things that we know as artists, as poets, as storytellers, is we know that you have to move people internally so that they can make a decision to take action externally. And no shade to the listener to your program who likes the hard news, the hard-hitting journalism, but in order to build the mass movement that we need to use all the tools to engage people, and that includes the arts as well as more traditional political journalism. And so for me, over the last few years, I've always been active around movements that are connected to environment, particularly around race and environmental justice. But for me, as someone with Black and Puerto Rican heritages, when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, that was my climate awakening. And ever since then, I've committed to put climate to the degree possible in the center of all that I'm doing as an artist. So I've written several novels about the climate crisis, and as you read in my bio, I'm becoming a publisher. Fighting Chance Books will be publishing books by writers of all genders that are about winning in the climate crisis. You know, we've had literature that really praises and appreciates nature, and we've also had literature that laments what's happening around nature. And what I think we need more than anything right now is a literature that encourages people to fight for climate justice. You know, there's a really nasty rumor going around that all hope is lost, that it's too late, that the end of the world is coming, and certainly you know, in climate and politically, there are a lot of very, very discouraging signs, but it's actually not too late. Scientists are clear that it's not, that there's still a lot that can be done, but it can only happen if we fight. So I'm excited to kick off Watershed this year, kind of sounding the call for us to fight and sounding the call for us to develop a literature of fighting. I've been writing, you know, more than one book a year, more than one novel a year, and it's not enough. Like, I want there to be a whole avalanche of a different kind of climate literature that's not about the end of the world, but about characters who are waking up to decide to fight for the new world that we want, and a literature that is basically writing the stories that call this new world into existence. So that's why I'm really excited to participate in Watershed this year.
Beautiful. And let me bring you in, John Curl. Your latest book is Rainbow Weather, forgive me. It's a collection of new poems focusing on your lifetime involvement as an activist for ecological planetary justice. Tell us about your relationship to the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival, why it's important to you.
Well, poetry is coming really is bringing things to the discussion, or bringing things to the politics of this time that can't be brought any other way. Some people prefer their poetry set to music in the form of song. So, but the spoken word and poetry brings a form of consciousness. This is a struggle of consciousness, and it's a worldwide. It's a cultural change that's going on. It's either the planet is destroyed, or else we get it together, and and we create a habitable Earth for our great grandchildren, and it's not. There's a political aspect to it, but the most important aspect is the cultural aspect, because politics really follows culture, and political movements can't exist or can't be successful without a cultural movement supporting them. And so we're in a state where it's only the culture that is engaged, or the culture of engagement, of political engagement, or engagement with environmental issues. And the environmental issues include everything, because you can't have environmental justice without having social justice. Social justice movements are subsumed in the larger environmental movement, which is really kind of sweeping the planet. I mean, I've been involved for 30 years with Indigenous Peoples Day and the Berkeley Powwow, and those Native people have always lived by these values, and passed them on to their grandchildren. So, and then we go back far enough. We all have ancestors who knew how to live in good ways and who knew how to live in indigenous ways. But we've come through the Industrial Revolution for the last couple of hundred years, into a situation where the people who do not, or who are not willing to live in sustainable ways and make their own communities livable and wonderful places to live, have the people who want to go out on these colonial and imperialistic ventures to take other people's land, other people's resources, and live off those. That we're coming to the end of that. There really is no place left to plunder in the world, and now we have people who want to plunder space. But there is for human beings, for human society, we have to take care of this world, and that's where poetry comes in. Poetry brings values to the conversation that can be that is brought in nowhere else. It puts it in perspectives, in larger perspectives. There's it's based on deep emotions, and poetry, like all culture, is based on and all art is based on the ability to transform negativity into positivity, create to change pain into beautiful things, to take living things that have been almost destroyed and bring them back to life. And that's what the poetry that we're bringing this weekend at the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival is all about. It's about bringing life, bringing the forces of life through poetry into the conversation, so that we can have the cultural background of a worldwide movement to save the planet before it goes over the cliff any further.
Yeah, we're working on that. One of the things that I love about poetry is that it is information, but it sort of skips the brain oftentimes. Sometimes it starts at the brain, but it will enter through the heart or the bloodstream, work its way around the body, and then it can explode into the head, and it makes connections that I guess we don't always see right away. I love the opening line by Muriel Rukeyser in the poem Islands, which starts out, "Oh, for God's sake, they are connected underneath." Islands, and this notion that we are all connected there, and I get my breaking news from Rumi in the 15th century. I'm still getting clues to live. Let me ask, it would be great to get both of you to read some poetry. Aya, can we start with you? You got a poem or two for us?
I'm not ready. Let me go second. I will get one, though.
Okay, you go get one. John, you got a poem?
Okay, I'll start reading this poem from my new book, Rainbow Weather. This poem is called She Said, He Said. Don't worry about trying to fix it, he said. We've destroyed this world past redemption, beyond habitability. It's dead, murdered. Our task now is to leave and colonize another planet. Wow, he really said that. Seriously. He imagines heroically saving humanity from extinction by escaping to some spacesuit utopia in the stars. That is the Puritan's eye, escaping the corrupt old world, reinventing yourself in a new city on a hill in an imagined tabula rasa, the eye of the imperialist, dreaming that there is always some new pristine place to start over again and plunder. Even now, when people have pillaged the entire earth and there is no place left here to plunder. Then go if you must, she said, to your own suicide, but don't expect me to buy you that spaceship. Even if life really did come here long ago from the stars, she said, and even if that means we are star people too, even so, we have been here so long, we are now and forever Earth people, and the Earth does not belong to us, we belong to her. This planet is not an object we can use, abuse, discard like so much garbage. Our task now is not to escape, but to stay right here, to hold fast to Earth, to learn to live here, to protect her. We are now and forever inseparable from her, our wild, watery habitat, our precious green mother.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Aya de León, you got a poem for us?
I do. I'm going to read, it's actually a piece of fiction. This is from the prologue to my 2019 novel, Side Chick Nation, which is about Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And what you need to know is, Side Chick Nation is about Puerto Rico's colonial status as sort of the mistress colony of the United States, but it's also about a character, Dulce Garcia, who was pimped as a teen, and sort of that metaphor of mistress or exploited woman or girl, and colonization and climate change. So, this is from the prologue. Beautiful. Water flooded the storage space as Dulce slept. It seeped through the metal slats in the pull-down door. It pooled on the concrete floor. It rose around the mattress where Dulce was sleeping. Although she was not exactly sleeping, more like in a stupor or a spell from the cocktail of rum and marijuana, it dulled her hearing so she didn't startle with the shrieking winds and battering rain of Hurricane Maria, the thudding of broken branches against the building. It dulled the panic she would have felt alone in a storage space where she was living illegally in a hurricane and nobody knew she was there. Water seeped up, turning the mattress into a giant sponge. Soon her back was wet. The crisscross of her racerback tank top, the cotton shorts. The moisture soaked into the fabric, even above the surface of the water she lay in, inch by inch. The line crept up her feet, her beautifully painted blue toenails, the sides of her arms and legs and torso. It saturated her hair, destroying the remains of the blowout she'd been trying to conserve. She had sweated out the roots, but the tips of her hair stayed somewhat straight, even in the humidity. She'd kept up the ponytail over the last few days so the ends didn't erupt into tight curls from the sweat on her back and shoulders. But now the water rose just above the mattress, soaking her hair, and it bloomed into springing curls all around her head. Still, she slept. So I'll stop there.
Wow. Well, you must know we've done extensive reporting on Puerto Rico.
Yes.
And the sort of the grit and the sort of action that comes out of people resisting that kind of colonial power is always moving and always leads to poetry, and appreciate that. I want to tell people that was Aya de León. Before her reading was John Curl. They're part of a very powerful Bay Area poetry festival happening in Berkeley. It's called the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival. And of course, we thank Poetry Flash, Joyce Jenkins, Kim McMillan, and thank you, Kim, for making this interview possible. And there are going to be many poets participating this weekend. It's going to start, it's going to go Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival from noon to 4:30. It's free in Berkeley, Martin Luther King Jr. Civic Center Park in Berkeley. Poetry, nature writers, speakers, music, and, well, let me ask you how you guys are feeling. You know, we poets are fighting for the earth, and the earth is in trouble now. Our show today opened up with the fact that this loose talk about nuclear weapons and nuclear war is sort of making all of us very nervous. I think I became a poet during the Cuban Missile Crisis. How does poetry wrestle with crisis? You can both take a shot at that.
Well, I think one of the most important things in all of this is to understand the role that fear and trauma play for us in dealing with the crisis, with the climate crisis, the rise of fascism, the nuclear threat. We are all dealing with what does it mean to have to be so triggered so much of the time. And one of the things that I think is just super important for us all to remember is that the future is not written, and that what happens in the future really depends on what we do now, and that it is in the interest of these corporations and these shady politicians for us to feel terrified and powerless. And most of us have some experiences from our childhood, especially our early childhood, where we felt powerless or we felt defeated. And, many of the conditions of the world these days keep us sort of with those memories very much alive. And I think it's super important that we do the emotional work we need to do to reclaim our sense of optimism and possibility. And it's not easy because there's a lot of bad news, and that's real. But the future is not written. And in order to do the activist work we do, we need to come, as so many revolutionaries have said, from a place of love. And I think we need to come from that place of reclaiming that hope and optimism that gets crushed when we don't address our trauma.
Beautiful. John?
You mentioned the Cuban Missile Crisis, Dennis, and that was a tremendous event for myself also. It was the Cuban Missile Crisis that taught me to live each day as if it was the last. And poetry gave me the long-term perspective. Poetry gives you the perspective of thousands of years, which is the indigenous perspective. It's these things are the news cycle is very, very short, and we have a very small attention span. But we need to realize that we're long distance runners. We're not running from one election to another. We're dealing with at least 7 generations, and after that 7 more generations, and that's what poetry brings to us. And poetry gives us the tools to transform destruction into life, as all art does. Participating in art, it illuminates the forces within each person to transform the negativity in each of us and in our society and in our world into something that is hopeful and optimistic, and historically has resulted in great social movements to transform our society and to right many historical wrongs. We don't. They have mixed success, but that is what we need. We need the greatest social movement that the history of the world has ever seen, and we need to provide the infrastructure and the basis for it through poetry and other forms of culture, through novels, through music. And it's only art, only culture that really is engaged with this struggle that will be relevant in the next 100 years. And we're going to be bringing a lot to the festival this weekend.
León, I want to give you the last word, and I want to evoke with you. You now have taken over Poetry for the People, which was founded by the late and great June Jordan, who was a very good friend of mine and have missed for a long time. Where do you think June Jordan would come down on the environment? Would she be out there fighting? What do you think?
June Jordan was always out there fighting, and one of June's superpowers, always. And one of her superpowers was about making connections between things that other people did not connect. She made connections between the struggle in Palestine and the African American struggle. She made connections between struggles around racial justice and the environment. And I think that she would be continuing to do that. One of the places where I'm active now is in the climate formation of the movement for Black Lives, which is called the Black Hive. And the Black Hive has a Black climate mandate. You can read it online at m4bl.org/the-black-hive. And that's M4, number 4BL. And so these kinds of connections between racism, between the need to defund the police and the need to divest from fossil fuels, our movements are making these connections, and the different movements are connecting up, like John was saying. And I think it's a very exciting time in terms of this mass worldwide movement that we're building. And June Jordan would be out there in the streets raising hell. and writing poems.
Oh, I love that. I love it. We're out of time, but I just want to tell people, you want to check out you're in the Bay Area or listening locally, meet at Oxford. That's at the edge of UC Berkeley campus. A Walk with the Poets. That's 10 o'clock a.m. Join the festival, Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival. I'm out of time. Thanks. Lots of love to both of you.